All right, welcome to our 11 to 18-year-old Summer Adventure Club 2020 setup webinar. If there are any technical difficulties that you guys are having right now, you guys can send them into our question box. That's going to be the kind of chat-looking window you're going to see on the right side of screen, and we will have a team answering questions as they come in. We're expecting the meeting to be over a little before 6. We're scheduled to take up the whole hour, but we don't expect to take that whole time. So let's get underway. To start off with, what are we going to cover today? We're going to introduce ourselves, and I'm going to introduce myself. I'll also have my instructors introduce themselves. We're going to go over exactly how we'll be teaching the classes to all of your students. I'm going to run you guys through some of the basics of Google Classroom and how you or your students will be submitting assignments through there. And after that, we'll be kind of discussing how students will complete their classes. How will you know that they have done the requirements they need to do and that they have turned in what they need to turn in? We'll close it off with a brief Google form that you guys can fill out to make sure that everything went well, explain things that you feel could have been done better. And then beyond that, an important part there is so that we can make sure everyone's registration, what they're registered for, what email is registered to them, and then what their names are, because we want to make sure all 3 of those are accurate and we don't have any parents or scoutmasters being confused for scouts in the classroom or in the Zoom calls. And then, of course, we'll close with some time for questions. So starting off, we'll get these introductions in place. Prepare your eyes. Where are we at? And boom. All right. I am Matt Grimes. I'm the one who's been sending out a decent number of the emails specifically to this program. And I'm going to be the program director running your scouts through everything. And my staff are going to introduce themselves one by one.
Hey there, my name is Isaac. I am the Trail First Class instructor and coordinator. I'm looking forward to all you students in my classes. Hey, my name is Logan Miller. I'm a merit badge instructor. This week specifically, I'll be teaching hiking, so I'm excited to get down there and help you guys out. Hi, my name is Jacob Waddington. I'll be a merit badge instructor as well, and this week I'm teaching reading. Looking forward to reading all those good books with the kids.
All right, and then those 3 will be out there working on your questions as we go through the webinar itself. Any questions that are repeated a number of times or beyond that, any questions that seem really relevant to what we're currently going over in the presentation, they'll be shouting those into my ear through these and letting me know that I should be clarifying something. So without further ado, let's get going with the rest of the presentation. So how will classes be taught? Quite frankly, I think it's fairly simple. It'll be through a combination of Zoom meetings and the use of Google Classroom. Virtual classes will be held at the very least this week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at those time slots that you should have gotten an email about at some point from me. If you haven't gotten an email about those yet, there will be a slot in that form that you're going to fill out later that will let you know that right off the bat. And then if it's not there, there's another section on the form that will work for you to send me your email and your scout's name so we can make sure you get those time slots written down. In the future weeks, it might not be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We might need to add an extra day in there, whether it's for a webinar like this, for engineering. We're going to need to have your scouts talk to an engineer who works in the field, and we might have something similar to this for them to fulfill that requirement. As it looks this week, we're hoping to be able to go light on Friday for requirements because reading and hiking have a number of requirements that your scouts will be fulfilling on their own. In the note of Zoom meetings, I know there's been some questions. Will they be posted in Google Classroom? Will they be emailed out? How will they go about doing that? So right now, our plan, and we really appreciate all the patience you guys have had as we're getting the ball rolling. When we do this week, our instructors will organize a Zoom meeting. They will send an email out to all of the students for that class time to join that Zoom link for that hour's Zoom meeting. For instance, if you have a scout in a class at 9 a.m., then that 9 a.m. class will have a Zoom meeting from about 9 to about 9:50, and they'll get an email that they can use the link in the email to join that Zoom meeting just before 9, probably between 8:50 and 9 o'clock itself. If a scout misses a meeting, it's totally fine. We expect them to be there unless they clear it with the instructors, but we know that there are family things that come up. There are other things that they have for the summer. We're working with people in the age group where whether they're going to another camp or they're going camping with their friends, or maybe they're leading a camp program with their troop, things like that, there will be times where there are scheduling conflicts. And that's why we have all of the extra time built into our schedule, where my crew will be on their phones and at their laptops regularly checking to make sure all the scouts are doing well and keeping up with the work. A couple of things on how classes will be taught. I mentioned earlier that there will be some requirements that they'll be completing on their own. In your adventure boxes, as they come in, there aren't any this week necessarily, but in the future, for electricity, I know we're going to have a number of things in that for them to complete some requirements on their own. Beyond the projects that are more hands-on, hiking. The hiking merit badge scouts need to take a total of 5 to 6 hikes. We don't expect your scouts to take 5 to 6 hikes over the course of this first week, by no means. That would not be a good thing for anyone to try and do right now. But we'll have an assignment in Google Classroom set up that will be assigned to them, and they'll see the list of the hikes they have to do, and beyond the list, it'll say what we want them to describe about those hikes. Once they finish all of the hikes listed in that assignment, they will turn in a short write-up of that assignment, and we'll go over how things are turned in on Google Classroom and another couple slides. But they'll turn that in, and their instructor will look it over. Okay, awesome. Oh, this one thing is missing. You didn't mention the weather, and we really need you to talk about the weather due to the verbiage in the requirement. Then your student will get an email. Hey, what was the weather like on these hikes? Just so we can get a brief 1 or 2 sentence check-in, and we've gotten that requirement knocked out. Of course, we wouldn't expect anyone to go on hikes in a week, let alone go on hikes while staying on Zoom meetings. So they'll be doing those outside of the Zoom meeting environment. I mentioned something about due dates there as well. Most assignments, for instance, reading this week, reading scouts will need to, or students will need to this week talk about and read about world events that are going on around them. They'll need to choose 2 world events and 2 different sources and kind of look into it a little bit, read a couple articles. That's an assignment that I trust most students can complete at some point before Friday. So it will have a due date at the end of next week, but the due dates are not hard and fast. We understand, again, this is summer, everyone's still at home or bouncing out on camping trips. So there will be times when they're too busy to complete something during that week. When that happens, we'll just have them turn it in when it's finished, and we'll grade it then. And we'll let them know if there's anything missing at that time. Ideally, it'll be turned in during the week. Once you put it past 1 week, if there's not like a really good reason to put it past, I know from working with youth, we all know, youth included, once you put something off for long enough, the procrastination becomes easier and easier and easier. And we want to avoid all of the students having to take a whole bunch of write-ups and do all of these extra things when it comes to week 8, when they could have done it back during week 1, and then the week 2 during week 2, and so on and so forth. All right, that's kind of a general summary of how we'll be teaching the classes. Now let's jump into something about Google Classroom. All right, I know a number of you have registered for Google Classroom already. I have heard a number of parents, I've had them email me, and also just parents, guardians, and Scoutmasters, that they registered for Google Classroom by mistake with their accounts. There was some confusion there through the text that was on some of our forms. And so the form that I'll have you fill out at the end of this webinar will include a section for you to say your name, your student's name, what email you would like registered to the Google Classroom. I would highly recommend it be the student's email. If for whatever reason, it would work better for you to have the guardian get all of the notifications for when things are assigned to the student, then by all means, that works just fine on our end. It's just from my experience, I would recommend using that student's email so that you have a general idea. Even if you're not joined to the classroom now, this will be a nice quick run through. When you send it to Google Classroom, you may have more than one classrooms that you're already a part of, and you'll want to click on the 2020 Summer Adventure Classroom. When you join that, you'll see this at the top. And at the top of the page, it'll open on stream. You'll want to look for classwork to see if anything has been assigned. And then right now, what you'll see if you are joined to the classroom is the top image, as there has been no work assigned to anyone yet. The work will be assigned tomorrow at the start of class, so that we know for sure our registrations are good and you guys aren't getting flooded with assignment emails for the wrong classes for whatever reason. The bottom image is what it will look like when there is an assignment. If there is, say, the hiking in the field write-ups, where students will have to describe their experience on the hikes that they went on. They will see the thing at the bottom and they will click on that assignment to be brought to this page where you can see the title of the assignment, and you can see on the right there, they can add or create. They can attach most any file formats to it, and then marking is done is how you submit that assignment. That is how we know, awesome, Johnny has finished his hikes, done his write-up, submitted it to us. We can look it over and make sure it fulfills everything it needs to fulfill. If it doesn't, then we'll get in touch with it. All right, I'm waiting to see if my question guys have any big questions that have been repeated a lot that I should answer for Google Classroom. I see one question there. If we have already completed one of the merit badges in this course, are we still required to participate in the classes? You're not required at all. I actually have a couple of students who signed up for TTFC and a merit badge, and for this week, they're not participating in one of our merit badge classes. They're just participating in the TTFC portion, and they're going to jump in later on and with other merit badges that they have an interest in. That's totally fine. An easy way to communicate that with us will be in the bottom of the form at the end of this webinar. There is a comments or questions box, and if you fill in right there what you want to fill in, then you can do that just fine. Later on in the season, if something comes up, then you can always shoot me an email and get in touch with me that way.
Hey, Matt, I've got another question for you.
All right, what's up, Isaac?
It's from Brandon Hall. As far as blue cards for the Scoutmasters to sign off, how do we get that document and get it into our Scoutmasters to sign?
All right, so as far as blue cards go, as of now, we have a form that should have gone out to just about every registrant. It perhaps for a time was actually part of the registration process, where Scoutmasters had to approve, were putting down that they approved what merit badges were being participated in. Beyond that, I know that a question has came up with what's going to happen with blue cards before, and we're still working on that ourselves. The formatting wise, we're not sure yet. We're still a little ways out, but it potentially will be mailing out blue cards at the end of the summer. Though what we would like to do, if at all possible, is work with digital blue cards and send those out through a secure email to the troop or to the scouts themselves. As long as we're working digital, we don't need to worry about any delays. If anyone's coming up on a court of honor or a board of review or anything like that soon, then they wouldn't need to worry about a blue card getting lost in the mail, God forbid. But it's an experience I know some of us have had. If we keep digital, then we're able to do that fairly easily. Of course, like I said, we're not set in stone on that. We're working towards that a little bit. We're still a little ways out. All right, how will classes be completed? How will it be apparent that you have completed your class? Or to your guardian, how will they know that a student has completed the class? Quite honestly, when it comes to merit badges, we're still figuring that out. When it comes to merit badges, the way we've done it so far is our plan is to have a daily reflection quiz that students can go into and complete after their meeting. That way they will have an actual assignment in Google Classroom to count towards a grade total. And that's kind of what we're doing there, as well as the assignments I talked about earlier for things like their hikes, where they'll have to turn in a short write-up, and that will go towards a percentage of a grade. Of course, you're not getting a grade in the class. That's just, we're trying to figure out a way to make it clear via a percentage or assignments that are incomplete on Google Classroom what you're missing if for whatever reason you're up and working on it at a time when you can't get a hold of us. Like I said, work done independently will have assignments associated with it. They'll be turned into the classroom and will be, quote, graded. Graded meaning for hiking. In their write-ups, they have to discuss what weather they had and where they went and when they went there. If they're missing the weather portion of that write-up, then the instructor will read it over, get a hold of the student through email or through a message over Google Classroom, and we'll let them know, hey, what was the weather like? That way we can add that in and do that part, that discussion part of the requirement there. Like I said at the beginning, if a student misses a class and they didn't talk to their instructor about it before, then the instructor will get a hold of all the students who missed class that day. Sometime we're looking at about 6 or 7 o'clock, because that's when all of our classes will be finished. We may attempt 5 o'clock, especially once we get those 6 o'clock class blocks kind of knocked down a little bit, because hiking has fairly high registration this week. Surprise, surprise, for an Eagle required merit badge. All told, any of the progress will be regularly communicated with the instructors. During every day of class, they're going to talk about, hey, these are the things you need to be completing on your own. These are the things we're completing today. They're going to remind them to fill out that daily reflection, and they're going to remind them of any of the assignments to turn in on Google Classroom for those work-at-home assignments. For reading, you have to read 4 different books. We'll have an assignment on Google Classroom to list, hey, I've read the 4 books over the course of the summer, and you can turn it in with a brief write-up, basically what the requirements list for how you describe that book or those books in that requirement. And they'll be informed of that on day 1, day 2, and or day 3 of their reading class, just as regular reminders so the students know, hey, this is what I have to get done on my own time. On a different note, when it comes to Trail to First Class, we have it figured out. An interesting thing about Trail to First Class is when it comes to initialing and writing off requirements for advancement, only members of a youth's troop can actually sign them off. So even if we had every single scout book with us on site, and our TTFC instructor had them and could go through every single requirement with every scout directly, signing off in their book, well, we couldn't sign them off. It's not a merit badge counselor's duty to do that. That is something done by either youth that are in the troop that have been given that authority, or scoutmasters and or adult leaders amongst that youth's environment. That said, we plan to send out weekly emails listing all of the requirements we covered. That'll be in a bulk email list to all of the emails we have associated with Trail to First Class students. They will get a bullet point list. These are all of the requirements we went over. If we're doing knot time, it'll list every letter for each requirement, because there are certain requirements where we'll teach 5A and B on Tuesday and 5C on Wednesday and 5C on, say, Friday. Different days of the week, we have those staggered. When you've looked at merit badge books like that, you know they can be pretty back and forth on which ones go with which. Longer term projects. For instance, one of the first things we're going to do with Trail to First Class is get their first round of physical fitness for Tenderfoot out of the way. And physical fitness for Tenderfoot, we'll have them run their tests and input their values. We'll have another assignment in 30 days after that time period is over, where they can put in their new values and have it all recorded. and we'll include that, like I said, in the email. There will be a number of requirements that we can't complete in class. For instance, I don't have the exact location of the requirement right here, but there is a requirement where you, in essence, have to complete your totem chip. You have to learn how to properly sharpen a knife, sharpen an axe and a saw, and learn the proper use and care of all those items. We don't feel comfortable teaching that over this environment because with that requirement, the real spirit behind it is for a kid to get their hands on an axe and a saw and understand how to actually utilize them properly. And as I'm sure you all can understand, those aren't items we plan to be sending out in the adventure boxes. All of that said, we do plan to discuss 97%. I did the math this afternoon of all of the requirements from tenderfoot to first class. That is not complete. There will be certain requirements like the one I just said, where sharpening and handling of tools like an axe and a saw, where they can't complete it. But we will discuss it. We'll talk it through. We'll make sure that the youth has an understanding, at least at a 1,000-foot level, they have an understanding of how to do those things, but they can't necessarily be finished. That said, we expect to be able to, quote, complete requirements like teaching them how to use a taut line hitch. When we say complete on that, what we mean is our instructor will teach them how to tie the knot, and will work with them until they can tie the knot relatively independently and use the knot properly themselves. We highly encourage all of the scoutmasters or adult leaders or youth leaders in the troop to test the students on their Trail to First Class requirements. We're going to discuss different ways to perform first aid for different things. There are requirements in the first aid department in first, second, and tenderfoot. We have an entire week devoted to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Those class times will be going over first aid and just kind of discussing as a unit, as a class, through how do we perform first aid for a bee sting, for hypothermia, for things like that. Our instructor will be guiding those discussions, and the instructor will correct any mistakes that are made, and we'll give them information if they don't know the right answer to the question. But all of that said, we would highly encourage all the scoutmasters, adult leaders, and so on to not simply take that list of things they get every week and not hold themselves to that and assume that the student can do all of those things right now and they're completed. I highly encourage those leaders to actually quiz their scouts a little bit. You don't need to have them necessarily answer all of the questions again, but make sure they understand and have a thorough understanding of how do we treat hypothermia? How do we help treat heat stroke or deal with the symptoms of something like heat exhaustion? Things like that. Like I said, it's the responsibility of the adult leaders to actually do the signing off. We are hoping to take a bulk of the weight of those responsibilities and spending our time instructing and teaching your students so that they can more easily and quickly get signed off. The last bit is, before questions, is this. With all of the emails and all the paperwork that has been traveling back and forth between offices, us, and y'all, things sometimes slip through the cracks. This is what we hope to be, in all essence, our safety net. Okay, let me see where I have that link. I have it somewhere. I swear I do. So that I can actually copy and paste it into the chat versus you having to type it out. That would be ideal, I imagine. But this Google form has a number of fields that we really hope that you can take the time to actually fill them out fully. If you fill this out, it will allow us to make sure your scout is properly registered to the right merit badge and or TTFC program. It'll let me know if you know what class times your scout is currently assigned for TTFC and/or merit badges. It'll let me know what email you want registered to Google Classroom. It will let me know if there are other emails besides that you want added to any of our email blasts, for instance, the Trail to First Class blast and things like that. And there is a section at the bottom for if there are any questions you think of that you don't get a chance to ask during this webinar. A section at the bottom that you can ask any questions you want, and I will reply back to the email you offer there. In the announcements, I just put in the link to our Google form. Whether you're filling that out now or if you have to bounce for whatever reason, and you can fill that out a little later tonight, we greatly appreciate you filling it out tonight. All that said, as you fill that out, I'm going to bounce out to questions, and I'll ask my gentlemen out there if there are any questions they've noticed in the chat that would be best answered by me right now. Isaac and Logan, are there any questions?
Yeah, I've got one right here.
right.
If I have two people on one computer, what do we do to get two forms?
If you have two people on one computer, if you haven't finished the form yet, then please just include them together. As long as you put, say, a comma between if there's two different emails, you put first name, last name, and if you put a comma or some identifying indication between the two, I'll be easily able to tell the difference in the results. If you, however, have already filled it in, let me do something else.
Okay, another question for you, Matt. What happens if a scout misses a class, or if they already have the requirements for that day?
All right, give me just one moment.
Of course.
Okay, I have just done a thing. You can now at the end with this URL, probably with the first one too. I feel like Google's fairly consistently good at handling that and keeping things updated. With this new link, at least for sure. Oh, it's the same link. Perfect. So Google's good at doing things. You should have a link at the end of filling out the survey or the form to fill in another one if you'd like to do that. Regarding requirements, like I said, we expect the kids to show up to class, but they'll have the email of their instructor after day one. And then in future weeks, I plan to send those emails out earlier because we won't be quite as pressed for time in terms of registrations. So we'll be able to send that email out earlier, the address to everyone who's going to be in the class. And the student can take it upon themselves to coordinate with their instructor to know, hey, I finished these requirements that you said we're going to talk about on Wednesday. Can I miss class? And that's totally fine. If a kid misses class for whatever reason and they didn't get in touch and they need to get the requirements done, like I said, our plan is to get a hold of all the scouts or students who didn't show up to class that day at the day's close and kind of find out, hey, did you miss class for a reason? Did you just forget? What happened? Is there some way that we can help accommodate that? And we'll work from there to get the requirements they missed done more independently. And that could be in a phone call, that could potentially be through email, that could be through a short Zoom meeting, anything like that that would work well for the student. We by all means, our main goal this summer is to offer the students in the classes the easiest way to find a path to success. Along that way, we hope to make things pretty simple for all of the guardians who are helping coordinate things for them. And ideally, we don't have too many mess ups in terms of scheduling especially. But we're going to accommodate for the scouts whenever possible. Gentlemen?
Yes, I've got one more for you, Matt. On account of missing classes or not having the ability to do certain requirements, how are we going to handle partial blue cards?
How are we gonna handle partial blue cards?
Yeah, exactly. Like if one person here says their
Oh.
11-year-old probably won't be ready for a 20-mile hike for the hiking merit badge.
Oh, okay. I got it. So partials from this, like if they earn a partial. We'll handle it the same way we'll do blue cards normally. It'll just be when we fill out the requirements that they've completed, we'll leave blank the requirements that they didn't. If you have attended scout camp, then you'll know this. If you don't, then I'll let you know now. On the back side of a blue card, on one side there is a table where we will list down as the instructor all of the requirements they completed, when they completed them with our initials, and then on the obverse side there's a little section for notes. If there are particulars such as your 11-year-old was able to complete 2 of the 10-mile hikes, the 2 10-mile hikes and the 5-mile, but the 15 and the 20-mile were just out of their realm right now and for the summer, then we'll put in that note section what was completed and what still has yet to be completed.
Perfect. I don't really see any more questions except for this one that just popped in. What are blue cards?
Blue cards in scouting, when you complete a merit badge or when you do part of a merit badge in a class, you get a piece of paper that's a little bit bigger than a note card, and they're traditionally blue. That's why they've just colloquially become known as blue cards. And that card lists your scout's name, their troop, their council, information about the counselor, the person who taught the merit badge, in case you need to get in touch with them. And it can be split into 3 different parts. One part will be, in theory, one part is the counselor's record, which especially independent counselors separate from the council itself will keep a copy for their records. There's 1/3 that is kept for any of the scouts' records, and then the third third is going to be used by the troop or the unit coordinator or advancement coordinator when they have to figure out who gets what blue cards or what merit badges. I have been informed we won't even be using blue cards ideally, at least not physically. Digitally, we hope to use grid sheets, which is even simpler. It's just a list of the requirements and which ones they've completed without any of the extra boxes or ticks to fill in.
All right, Matt, got another one for you. With the virtual merit badge course offering from CPC so far, we have not received any grid sheets or feedback re-merit badge completion. When and how will we receive blue card information to look forward to Scoutmasters? At the end of the program, as merit badges are completed, how will that be handled?
Good question. I think I mentioned in passing earlier, that's a realm of things that we're not entirely tied down to quite yet. The vast majority of our time, quite frankly, has been devoted to developing the program itself and coordinating classes and registrations for the program. When it comes to completions, partials, grid sheets, everything like that, the one thing we are wanting to do is Trail to First Class. Those will go out in a weekly email. Regarding merit badges themselves, they may be sent out, they may not be sent out after week 1, just because we may not have the materials in line, whether digital or physical, to complete that process. But we plan and we hope to have all of those materials sent out on a weekly basis. We want to try to mitigate any issues because we know that there are students who will be having whether it's a conference with their Scoutmaster or what have you, where they need to have proof I completed this merit badge right here. And here's the evidence to show it. And by no means, we do not want a scout to need their, let's say, hiking merit badge, blue card, or evidence that they completed their hiking merit badge. We don't want them to need it on June 28th or July 28th, and just to send out in bulk everyone's stuff in one email at the end of August, once all of our 8 weeks are over. So I hope you can understand that, where it may not be at the end of week 1 that we're able to send everything out, just because we're still coordinating the classes and everything like that. But we hope to be sending them out on at least a weekly basis in the next couple of weeks. Isaac, what are we looking at?
Another question is, when will we be receiving the rest of our TTFC materials? And there are also a few questions about some people not receiving their TTFC materials.
Oh, regarding the rest of the TTFC materials, that's expected to get sent out at some point this week, the week that we're starting now. That's expected to be shipped out, and so it should be with you at the latest by the week 2 of our program. Let me pull up the calendar so I can actually say the dates. At the very latest, ideally your TTFC boxes, assuming everything from us to you goes to schedule, the week of the July 5th through July 11th. Do not worry, for whatever reason, if you have not received your box yet, whether that's for merit badges or TTFC, at the very least, don't worry. Don't worry in regards to actually completing the requirements, as our first week of program, TTFC our first couple of weeks, merit badges, at the very least hiking and reading, do not require any of the materials from the box. Once we get into other merit badges, particularly electricity, things like that, those you will get materials in the box that are required to complete requirements. But as our current state is, TTFC is not using any of the material from the box as required items until week 3 or so of our program there. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, it should have answered the question.
No, there was one. Someone said they hadn't received their box yet. If you haven't received your box yet, please include that information on the Google form. I know that there have been some who have registered in like the day or the day after we actually sent out the boxes. And then beyond that, there's been enough of a shift in different aspects on our side from time to time that some of the boxes got shipped out a little bit later than the first round of boxes. Ideally, they should all be arriving this week, though, as with the TTFC boxes.
I'm not seeing any major questions right now, so I think that's about it for those questions. Again, if you have any more questions, feel free to send them to us. We can either answer them privately or we can have Matt talk about them.
I do see one thing. I don't know if you guys have answered it there, but someone asked, for kids that are simply signing up for merit badges, will they be receiving things in the mail? Yes, they will. They will receive things in the mail. For the first couple of weeks, it's kind of some Summer Adventure Club swag and some extra items. I know for week 3, we have some really interesting things that go really along well with our merit badges for week 3. But they will be getting things in the mail, yeah. Awesome. So all of that said, the form is going to be kept open and I'll be looking at it throughout the night. You guys have my email address. It's the one on screen, and you guys can use that to get a hold of me. If I, for whatever reason, am unable to answer your question, then I will pass you along to the best person to answer that question. If there aren't any more, Isaac,
Nope.
all right. Then I believe we will call it good, and I'll wish you all a good evening.